Fairytale, Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, on the edge of an old forest in a small house, there lived a woodcutter with 2 children. The boy was named Hansel and the girl Gretel. Soon, the woodcutter remarried, and a stepmother appeared in the house. The family was so poor that there wasn't even enough money for food. One evening, tossing and turning in bed from side to side, the woodcutter sighed and said, "I don't know what to do. What are we going to feed the children? We have nothing to eat ourselves." And the stepmother replies, "Let's take the children to the forest tomorrow morning, make a fire, leave them there, and not come back. The children will never find their way home from the forest by themselves." The woodcutter sighed and sighed. He pitied the children, but in the end, he agreed with his wife. Only the children weren't asleep and heard everything. Gretel began to cry quietly, but Hansel didn't shed any tears and promised his sister he'd come up with something. When the grown-ups fell asleep, the boy slipped out of the house and filled his pockets full of small white pebbles. In the moonlight, they sparkled like pearls. Early in the morning, the stepmother woke up the children, and they all went to the forest together. As Hansel walked, he threw the pebbles out of his pocket one by one without anyone noticing. 10 steps, 1 pebble. In this way, the boy marked the whole path from home. Deep in the forest, the woodcutter made a fire and sat the kids down to bask in its warmth. Then he, along with the stepmom, went off to work. The children sat for a long time, waiting for their dad to come back until they fell asleep. And when they woke up, it was already night and the moon was shining. Hansel took his sister by the hand and went looking for the path home, marked by the pearly white pebbles in the moonlight. All night the children walked. And at dawn, they knocked on the door of their house. The stepmother got angry, but the father was very happy that his son and daughter returned. He felt very guilty for leaving them in the forest. But soon there was even less to eat in the house, and then the stepmother persuaded her husband to take the children even further into the forest and locked all the doors so that Hansel couldn't come up with anything again. The stepmother woke up the children very early and gave each a tiny slice of bread. On the way to the forest, Hansel crumbled the slice of bread in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the road without anyone noticing. In this way, they came to the very heart of the forest where none of them had ever been. Again, they made a fire. The stepmother and father left again, giving the kids strict orders to sit and wait for them to return. On a dark night, the children waited for the moon to appear, but they couldn't find a single crumb. Probably the birds had eaten them up during the day. What a pity that this time Hansel's plan didn't work. Do you remember what he used to mark the whole path the first time? Sugar, candy, white pebbles. That's right, you have a great memory. Of course, white pebbles which sparkled in the moonlight. Subscribe to our channel. There are many new fairy tales waiting for you. So, Hansel and Gretel simply went forward until they came to a small house. It was made entirely out of gingerbread. The windows were caramel and looked very yummy. Hansel was very hungry, so he immediately broke off a piece of gingerbread roof for himself, and Gretel a piece of the window.
Who's there?
The children didn't even notice that an old woman came out of the house, leaning on an old and crooked stick.
Come inside. Be my guests.
Yummy treats were waiting for the kids in the house. Milk and cookies. When they had eaten their fill, the old woman put them to bed in soft, clean beds. But Hansel and Gretel didn't know that this old woman was an evil witch, and she built the gingerbread house on purpose to catch small children. Early in the morning, as Hansel was sleeping sweetly, the witch grabbed him and locked him up in a cage. Then the wicked old woman woke up Gretel and ordered her to cook some food. Lots of food.
I want to fatten up your brother, and when he gets plump, I'll eat him.
She laughed viciously. Oh, how Gretel cried. But there was nothing she could do, and she had to do as the witch ordered. 4 weeks, the girl cooked food and fed her brother, until finally the old woman decided that it was enough.
Hey Gretel, come on lazybones, bring some water. I'm now going to roast your brother and eat him,
shouted the witch to the girl. Gretel brought water and large drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. When the witch had heated the oven, she called the girl once again.
Crawl inside and take a look if there's enough coal.
Gretel immediately realized that the old woman wanted to roast her along with her brother. So she pretended that she doesn't know where to look.
Stupid girl,
the old woman said angrily, went over to the oven and even stuck her head inside. Then Gretel pushed the witch from behind so that she immediately fell into the oven. The girl slammed the oven door shut. The witch howled terribly and dissolved into yellow sparks, as if she had never been. Gretel immediately ran and freed her brother. The children were so happy they jumped and hugged for joy, and since they now had no one to fear, they went into the witch's room, which she always kept firmly locked, and found there, no, not gingerbread, but chests full of pearls, gold and silver. Hansel and Gretel took as much treasure as they could carry and continued their journey through the forest again. Soon the forest began to seem more and more familiar to them, until, finally, they saw their father's house in the distance. The woodcutter cried for joy when he saw his son and daughter alive and well. He had kicked the mean stepmother out of the house a long time ago and was terribly sad that he had abandoned his kids in the forest. When Hansel and Gretel began taking gems out of their pockets, he was very surprised. After all, now they had something to buy food with, and the 3 of them began to live in joy and prosperity. That's how Hansel and Gretel defeated the evil witch. They didn't give up and fought hard. So don't forget, my little friends, a sharp mind, a quick wit, and determination will always lead to success.